are listening to Inside Voices on WNHHLP 103.5 FM. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Georgia Colburn. I am the director of Hope for New Haven and the I'm the executive director of Hope for New Haven and the co-founder of Circle. I would just like to take an opportunity to just welcome with me here one of my former parents. Now, I guess it's going to be a former parent situation, and Miss Tianaya Cotton. And your family is really very well known in New Haven, aren't they, Miss Tia?
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are. So we're going to spend an hour, or a little bit less than an hour, just talking to Tia today again. And Tia, you moved out of the state of Connecticut.
Yes, I did.
Where are you now?
I am in the state of Washington in Seattle.
In Seattle. I've been wanting to go to visit Seattle, so now I know I have a house when I go there.
Yes.
I can visit one of my former parents. Tia, we've been doing Inside Circle now for a few minutes and a few months. And I have wanted to ensure that in all of the conversations that we have, that we lift up the voices of parents in this
Yes.
conversation, because the work that we do around early care and education is centered around families, right? And it's centered around families like yourself, and it's centered around children always. And so we always want to hear the perspective of parents because I believe that that voice is so absent from
Yes.
the conversation, and I think it should be central to the conversation. And this is why I think it was important to have you coming on, not just because you are a parent at Hope Child Development Center, or you were, but because of the lens that you have and the perspective that you have. And that's really what the bulk of our conversation is going to be, right? So I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, Tia, to the audience and just share with them what you will, but share with them your background and share with them, where you've worked and some of the things that you've done in your life.
Yes, so my name is Tianaya Cotton. I have a background in behavior intervention as well as daycare management. I have had years of experience in collaborating with parents on how to best serve their children in the school system. I have had many years of experience in behavior intervention, allowing kids the ability that are on the spectrum and that have mental and developmental delays really filter through how they learn and how they are advocated for in the school system. I've been a huge advocate of early child education. As a parent of an autistic toddler and child, I really feel like that group of people and kids are underserved and are really under called for.
Yeah.
They are people don't really stick up for them. People really don't put everything and advocate for them. And so I'm a big pusher of making sure that those kids are advocated for. And so I've been doing this for about 6 years. I my former position that I just resigned from is at Booker T. Washington Academy, where I was their behavior interventionist that really went through and looked at their IEPs, 504s, created behavior plans, really implemented the behavior plans, taught teachers on how to implement the behavior plans so it can best suit our children that need that extra support. So it's something that I really love and I really enjoy, and something that's really needed in this generation.
So, what caused you to land in that profession of being a behaviorist? I know when I made a decision to be an educator, it was an accidental one. And then it was also accidental going into early care and education because I was formerly an elementary school teacher. Initially, I wanted to be a Spanish teacher. But I fell deeply, madly, passionately in love with early child education. So what was the catalyst for you to say, hey, I want to do this?
So I think that it was starting off as I got out of high school, actually in high school. I was a part of a peer leadership group that I was advocating for. And I started a Big Brother, Big Sister in that high school called
Mhm.
Safe House, Students Aiming for Excellence, where we really advocate for those who just need the extra support in school. And so from going from that to going into school for psychology and really just find my niche. You know, you come into college, you don't really know what you want to do. And so I became a preschool teacher and
Mhm.
I was at a daycare and I fell in love with it. And as seeing behaviorists and BCBAs coming to the classroom, I really was like, this is what I love to do. And I got some more information and I became a behavioral therapist. And from there I got my RBT. And it's just been something that I really have fallen in love with, really speaking up and really advocating and helping, not just navigating this new diagnosis, navigating, challenges in behavior and mental health and educational needs, but also just advocating for the kiddo as well. And so that's just something that I fell in love with years ago, and it just stuck with me.
One of the things that I do as an advocate for parents is making sure that we translate certain initials and languages. And you just said RBT. And so for the audience, do you mind just sharing what that is?
So BT is behavioral technician,
Mhm.
um, and RBT is registered behavior technician. And so one is just, you have to take a test and you sit for the quiz, and you really have a really focused and targeted goal of really being educated in how to serve
Mhm.
our kids and teach them different intervention tools and de-escalation tactics under how to really serve our kids. And so one is just a entry level, and RBT is more of a focused, more advanced learning of that skill.
All right, thank you for educating me as well. So you mentioned that you were a director, an assistant director at a daycare. So talk to me about how that journey came about.
So that journey came about by accident, actually. Um, I was looking for a job. I just had my son, and I was looking for a job as a behavior technician. I traveled a lot, and so I served about, oh my goodness, probably about 7 or 8 cities in Connecticut,
Wow.
from Oxford to New Haven to Wallingford to North Haven, all the way to Naugatuck. And so I traveled a lot. And so as I had my son, I wanted to be more in one stable place where I can be accessible to him. And so I stumbled across a assistant director role. And because I had the knowledge of not just serving as a RBT, but also serving at my local church, which was New Hope Baptist Church, where my father is the pastor. I really
And what's your
had,
dad's name for those
his
folks who
name
might
is
not know?
Reverend Dr. John Cotton.
Okay.
He is a big staple in this community for our early childhood education, as well as just the religious community, really advocating for those, and school and advocating for those things. And so I have had that in my blood and geared it in me. And I was brought up in serving those who cannot or don't have the capacity to.
Hmm.
And so as I stumbled across it, they said, we think you'll be an awesome role for this. And in that position, I served in different capacities and really making sure that not only our kids are being educated, but they're also being getting the funds that they need. And so I would, lead parents into getting the services that they need through Care for Kids, or, really advocating for those parents that if you need the support, access so we can find it. And so in that position, I learned a slew of things that really geared my ability to be able to work in a school, because I've worked in a lower early childhood education school already.
Hmm. So what was that experience like, and what were some of the specific things that that experience taught you?
So that experience was rocky. Sometimes, some jobs are great and some jobs get rocky.
Mhm.
And I think it's all about finding your placement. In that job, I had my son go to the school as well. And because my son was in the school, it kind of gave me some lax to feel like, I can be here and be comfortable.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, 2 months into my employment, my son, that was 3 months, did get RSV. And when he got RSV, another child had it. And I pushed to have that room shut down
Mhm.
because it was so important to me that we remain safe at all times while still making sure that we're available and open for parents that need to work. And so I understand the importance of needing to go to work and needing, childcare, but safety is the most important for me.
Mhm.
Um, and past my judgment, they allowed the room to stay open, and my son did get sick and end up in the pediatric ICU for 2 months. During that time, it was very trying for me because you spend so much time advocating for everyone else's child, and
Mhm.
now it's you. And you have to be able to I had to be able to wear the director cap as well as the parent cap. And
Mhm.
that's difficult, especially when you know this could have been avoided. RSV is a terrible, terrible sickness that can ruin a kid's whole entire life. And I have had to go through that. And from knowing that, it really strengthened me to be able to stand on what I believe. And I believe that childhood education is important, but it's also important to keep our kids safe. And so that was hard.
I imagine, I don't have to imagine because I know that forever shaped the way that you interacted with the
Yes.
childcare system. And you came in as a protective mama bear at home.
Yes.
Um, and
Yes.
we didn't know the full history, but you were so super protective, so super guarded, and just making sure that, your child was cared for. But you went to other centers before you came to home,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So,
So
so this
after,
was a traumatizing experience when he was only
yes.
3 months, and then you had
Yes.
another center experience. So talk about
Yes.
that.
So the next center he went to was a smaller center. It was a center that was built up from the ground up from, another young Black woman that I really supported because I believe in supporting. And in that center, he was not taken care of how I wanted. He was being hurt. He was having to be let to not really get the care that he needed there. It was very traumatizing for me because I put my trust back in the child care system.
Mhm.
My mother had a daycare for years. And
Mhm.
so my mother is now retired from daycare. And so I know what the standard of care is. And I've been a director. So I know what the requirements are for that age group, ratio sake, documentation sake. I know all of that. And so when he went to that new daycare, I was like, hey, this is just not right. And it's hard because you're a parent, but I don't make it my business to kind of say, hey, you're doing that wrong because I know the regulations because I had to enforce them.
Mhm.
And so as going into that new daycare, I tried to have an open mind. And I understand that as a protective mama bear, I do have some, reservations of my own, but I have to give someone a chance. And unfortunately, I gave the chance to them and they did not hit the bar for me. I am very particular, mostly because he has asthma. There has been days where I picked him up and his asthma was over the roof. And we're not talking about a 4-year-old. We're talking about at this point a 6-month-year old where
Mhm.
he's wheezing when I'm picking him up. He's not eating when he needs to. And so it was very difficult for me. And what I ended up doing was just pulling him and sitting home with him
Mhm.
because I said, I would rather have him home than have to put a trust in a system that I am not confident in, or a daycare that I am not confident in. So it was rocky. It was really rocky.
So you've had an experience that's extraordinary, I think, for most parents. So you've had several childcare experiences, and you're also experiencing it from the lens of also being a director in a center.
Yes,
So you understand the other side of it, being a
yes,
director. So before I kind of dig a little bit deeper into more into the parent aspect. So talk to me about the perspective of, you know, engaging with these centers, as you said, knowing the regulations and knowing what
Yes.
has to be done because that's the work that you have to do. And talk about it. How did you said you didn't want to raise those as, as a part of the conversation because you didn't want people to kind of feel like
Yes.
probably that you are, assuming things about them that not may not possibly be true. And I think for a lot of parents, where you're unique is that you don't get to see both sides. As a
Yeah.
parent, you're just the end user, and you're just experiencing it as a parent leaving your child, but you're also a director as well. So you know the challenge that's involved in managing a center and the challenges of dealing with parents as well who are
Yeah.
themselves mama bears and papa bears.
Yeah.
So how did you navigate that role and that emotion as you were engaging with the director with your son? How much of that perspective played a role in your conversation? Because it sounded like it did play a role in the way that you
Yeah.
engage with the providers.
Yes, it definitely does. I think that it's all about putting on different caps. I am a person that takes on a lot of different things. I have learned to grab knowledge of a lot of different things because I believe, and I was raised to be well-rounded. And so, how that really impacted how I engage with the providers is because usually what I don't disclose is that I was an assistant director and that I do know the state regulations very, very well because I was an enforcer of them. My job as an assistant director was to go to classrooms all day and cite them and make sure that all of their things were right, down to sanitizing water, down to the ratios, down to the labeling, making sure there wasn't plastic in the rooms. That was my job.
Mhm.
And so as I'm sitting in these daycare centers, as long as it is not against state regulation to be unsafe, I
Mhm.
gave a little grace and
Mhm.
I gave like a hey, heads up, that shouldn't be over there,
Mhm.
or heads up, hey, that needs a cover, or heads up that placement and the floor set of this room is just off,
Mhm.
or heads up, we have to be careful about this. And so it really did impact how I really engage with the providers because it made it difficult for me to ignore, right? Like when you have knowledge about something, it's hard to engage. I mean, it's hard to ignore these red flags or ignore these big issues. And it just made it so difficult for me. But what I've learned to do is I've learned to have a lot of grace and
Mhm.
understand that this is a learning experience for everyone. And just because I have the knowledge, everyone doesn't have that knowledge.
Mhm.
And so really giving the grace and really just giving, some social, like some tips and some tricks. And then they're like, hey, how do you know all this? And I was like, well, I was an assistant director at a very large chain. And so I know what is doable and what's not, what's acceptable and what's not, and what every parent wants to see. Because I was hearing backlash from parents, but I
Mhm.
also understand parents at the same time on why they are so adamant about these things.
Mhm. So you pulled, and I don't want to disclose your child's name in the event. I don't want to do that. You're welcome to disclose if you don't, if you want to. So, but you pulled your baby out of the center and you stayed home with him. Um, what was that impetus that caused you to say, "Hey, I need to go back and I need to trust again"?
Mostly because I wanted to get back to my passion, which was advocating for kids, because I have the capability to advocate for my son.
Hmm.
My son being a African American autistic nonverbal child, it is hard for some parents to advocate for their kids, for 504s, for IEPs to fight. And I wanted to go back and fight for other people's babies. And
Hmm.
so I said, Tia, you have to put your trust in someone because you have to go back and fight for these kids. Because
Hmm.
if you don't, nobody will. We have a lack of supporting people in these roles. I think that it has to, people get jobs thinking that they love it and they forget that passion. Their
Yeah.
passion dies down. They forget their why. And my job at my last job was to remember my why and and really expand on my why and really implement and embody what why means.
Hmm.
We do this to service our kids. This is a service. We are servants, and we are to come with not only grace but also understanding, because this is what we have been set up to do. I think
Hmm.
sometimes burnout is real,
Yeah.
and I think with educators being burnt out and then having a leader that is burnt out, it gets
Yeah.
hard because you have nothing to grab onto. And so in my job as a behavior interventionist, yes, it was tiring, but I have learned to get past that tiring state, to understand that these kids need the support. These kids need someone that's going to say that is not right. These kids need someone that's going to say, "Hey, you need this. Hey, let's change your IEP for this. Hey, let's push back the city and advocate for a one-on-one for you." And so that's something that I was like, "Hey, Tia, you have to find somewhere, tour, take the time so you can really find somewhere where you can trust for your son, so you can go back really advocating for those babies that need it."
So that journey must have been a difficult one. So how many centers did you look into when you started that journey?
So after the center that he admitted immediately went to, I did try another big chain. And because he was older, I had challenges in getting him into the class that he needed.
Mhm.
And so I went to another chain, and he was in a infant classroom at 1.5. And it was very hard, and it was very, trying. And I said, you know what, I'm going to move him. And immediately after, I looked for about 2 weeks for about 20 or so centers.
Wow.
And unfortunately, when people hear, "Hey, tell me a little bit about your son," when I say nonverbal and I say maybe on the spectrum, they're like, "Okay, we're going to call you, don't call us." And it's very unfortunate, very unfortunate, because he needs the support. He needs to be around kids.
Mhm.
And I also understand that the developmental aspect of children, they need to be around other peers. And so it was hard. I went through 20 centers, and it was either, we'll call you, don't call us, or, we'll be in contact, or it just wasn't a good fit. So I went through quite a few.
Wow. So how did you land that hope?
Um, I learned about hope from my mother.
Mhm.
Like I said, my mother was a previous child care director, and she said, there's a, my dad's nonprofit is called Hope Incorporated. So she's like, "There's a hope somewhere. Hold on, let me look it up." And I was like, "Really?" And the values of hope, it was just amazing. It embodied everything that I was raised in: Christ centered education and learning. Even though my son is nonverbal, I do read to him. I do bring him to church, and I do make sure that the Lord is in his life as well, because I think that is a good baseline.
Mhm.
Even though he doesn't have the capability to speak, it is still important for that.
Mhm.
And so I learned about it, and I was like, I'll go give it a try, but I don't really know. I'm gonna go with an open mind, but I'm very nervous and I'm very hesitant. And so I just stumbled across it, and I love the center. I love the look of the center. I love that the teachers were inviting and open, and the atmosphere was very open and loving, and it felt like, okay, maybe I can breathe a little bit.
Mhm. And it was a little bit rocky. I want us to be in all things transparent. It was a little bit
Yes.
rocky at the beginning. So talk about that rockiness being in the beginning when you just started.
So it was rocky in the beginning because I am a mama bear. Because my son does not have the capability. He has a developmental delay as well as a social and emotional delay.
Mhm.
So he doesn't have that capability to kind of show the signs that he is in distress.
Mhm.
And so it's my job as his mom to really assess the situations and really see what's going on. It was a bridge gap in communication with some of the teachers. I am very much prepared. I came in everything labeled, bagged. I already know things can't be in plastic bags. "Oh, well, you can't have bags." I got you. They're cloth. I got you. Um, everything in his food is, because he is in speech feeding. I did have things, in bento box, and they've never seen something like that. That's too big. And I'm like, I had to, as well as not jump the gun to be frustrated, but understand that everyone doesn't have this knowledge that you have, right? And that's something that I really had to learn, that you can still give grace and give knowledge at the same
Yeah.
time and give understanding as well. And so it was a little rocky. I was like, hey, like, the communication is off. They seem irritated that I'm here and that Caden is here. And, I know that he's a lot and he is very busy. He doesn't talk. So he has some, some things, but, it was rocky at first. And when I really sat down and really said, hey, I've been in multiple centers, and I really gave them the rundown of, it's been rough for me. I've been in multiple centers. I've been, my son has been neglected. My son has been looked over. And I really just want you guys to understand that I'm only here to make sure that he's taken care of and make sure that he gets everything that he needs. And once that understanding came about, they were very open on understanding, like, okay, I understand. We got it, mama. We got you. Because some parents just come in and they rip wind, and then they just, don't show up with diapers, or they rip wind and forget their lunch. And then there's some parents that just like, hey, that's my baby. That's my baby. And I'm not coming in here to say that you're not doing your job. I just need to make sure that he's good.
Yeah. And so after you had that, sit down kind of disclosing conversation, obviously the relationship changed, right?
Yes.
But it wasn't just the change in the relationship with the teacher, but it's also, you shared with me, and you shared Caden's name, that he was also very different. So talk about that and talk about, your having to like kind of sort of like embrace that difference in him being at the
Yes.
center.
Yeah, so he definitely did change. I think one thing that kind of eased me was, he would let go. I would let go of him, and he would run to his class, and he would
Hmm.
sit at the gate and shake the gate, and he would be so excited. And even, when I left, the tears stopped, which made me feel okay to leave him, because okay, he's content enough to understand that mommy's coming back and you're safe.
Hmm.
Because he does have a lot of nonverbal cues, and his nonverbal cues is crying. When he hasn't, I can kind of tell the difference between his cries. Like, hey, why is he crying like that? Like, that's not just like I'm sad that you're leaving me. That's like, don't leave me here. He
Hmm.
didn't have that. And that's what I've noticed at other centers that he's had. Don't leave me here. Every single day, he's screaming for hours. I would stand outside the door and I could hear him screaming, screaming, screaming. And there was no soothing happening. There was nothing happening. And so that was a change for me. But it was a good change. I was able to, my previous centers, I was getting updates every single day, all throughout the day. When he ate, got changed. When he did this, got pictures. And that's not something that Hope did. And I was like, okay, that's a deal breaker for me. I don't know if I can stay here. Like, I need to know what's going on with him. And that's just honestly trauma speaking. I was very trauma. I was like, okay, what if I come in and he has a black eye? And my mom's like, Tia, take a breath. He'll be fine. And at first couple of days, I was like, well, I'm coming over there all my lunches. I'm gonna come over there and I'm gonna make sure he's good. And then after a while, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna pick him up the latest I can pick him up. And I'm gonna have some time to breathe, because as a special needs mama, it's hard. You don't get the time to breathe. You don't
Yeah.
get the time to really entrust in anyone, because you are the only one. You feel like you're the only one that can advocate and understand your child.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard. And it gave me a sense of being able to breathe for a minute, even if I get off at 4 and I have an hour and a half to just sit and breathe. As a special needs mama, you need that time. And just as a mom, you just need that time to really be able to trust into somebody, that even if you come the latest you can, he'll be fine. You don't have
Yeah.
to rush to him. You don't have to. So it was a breath of fresh air. It was a change, but it was a good change. It kind of loosened my reins a little bit when it came to my son, because I had him in a tight rope.
Yeah. And it's understandable. And you shared with me that, he also didn't want to leave when you came.
No, no, he would be so upset when I would have to leave, and he would feel like, I don't want to go. why are you leaving me? Like what do you what's going on? But then it changed to, hey, I don't want to leave. Like why are you trying to take me?
Why
I'm
are you
going,
here, mama?
why are you here? That is him in the back.
Yes.
Excuse him in the back.
He hears us talking about him.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, it's interesting because you said that and I have to full disclosure about my staff and my center. We do share stuff online with parents through Class Dojo, but we are not a center that is constantly taking pictures and updating parents because if we're doing that, then we're not doing something critical, which is
Right.
watching the kids,
Watching.
supervising the kids, caring for the kids.
Right.
And so for a lot of parents, that was really very scary for them. The idea that no, you're not going to get like minute by minute update.
Right.
No, we're not going to call you at work as well to manage crying and tears and temper tantrum because that's our job, right? Your job is to be mama and to drop them off and to do your job, but our job is to basically manage those behaviors because those children are eventually going to have to figure out how to self-regulate, which is one
Yeah.
of the things that we have to constantly tell parents. It's okay to hear your babies crying because
Yeah.
they have to go through that process of learning how to manage their emotion and not having all of their needs met. But one of the other things that we are also very careful in talking to our staff about is we know we got this, right? We know we're going to give the best care possible, but not every parent is coming in with a blank slate. Their parents
Yeah.
like Tia that's coming in where they've not had that experience. And so again, we have to also give grace to those parents. And so we always talk about the fact that we're not only caring for the emotions of children when they're being dropped off, but the parents as well. Right. But
Yes.
then going back again to the conversation about children having to build the capacity to manage and regulate and to, understand their emotions and how to express those emotions in a way that's appropriate. This is critical because, we're getting ready to send them off into the public school, which is where you are. And
Yeah.
so that's the other role that you share. And so
Yeah.
talk to me about, what your experience is, being in the school and being with children who aren't, well, one, are special needs. And special needs isn't just, an intellectual disability or a physical disability.
Hmm.
It could also be that emotional dysregulation that occurs in children because they didn't
Yeah.
have a high quality early care experience that helped them to prepare them for that. So talk about what those experiences are working with children in the public school and the work that you've had to do and the advocacy that you've also had to do there as well.
So while working in a school, you really have parents that, have a tough time supporting their kids through these changes, through
Mhm,
these different things. And so it makes it difficult because you become their first and only advocate.
mhm,
You become that person that is sitting there really making sure and being that mama bear to them. And
mhm,
so I became mama bear to 250 kids,
mhm,
where I would sit and advocate not for our special needs kid, but our neurotypical, which means, kids that are not special needs, and our non-neurotypical kids that have delays, have mental health issues, have ADHD, ADD, OCD, all these things.
Do you need to support him for a quick second?
Yes.
Okay, just you can bring Kaden in. Kaden, join us.
Hayden, you want to say hi? Come on, baby. Hello.
Hi, Kaden.
This is Kaden.
I guess you're joining us today, Kaden.
Yes.
I
And so,
need some
you
mama
know,
time.
yes. So like as I was saying, it's very difficult, and a lot of kids need this mama time,
Mhm.
and they don't have it. Parents are burnt out. Parents are, they need support. They need help being able to really care for their children.
Mhm.
And so I became mama bear to a lot of my kiddos. I
Mhm.
became that person that will sit, and if they're having a rough day and if they're having a tough day, I sit and I support them. I sit and I really advocate for them and give them that chance to have someone that's going to come in and run in to save the day for them.
So you talk a lot about the work that you have to do, and you're only one person, Tia. So
Yeah.
talk about what systems are there. How are you experiencing the system, both as a parent, as a director of a child care center, and now as a behaviorist in the school? Talk about how the system either supports or not support first children and then parents.
So it is a rough system because unfortunately, a lot of our system is not geared for our kids with special needs.
Hmm.
We have services, we have resources, but they're limited to what you will go get
Hmm.
and what you will fight for. And a lot of parents don't have the wherewithal to fight. They are tired. They are tired of being cast aside. They are tired of 15-year wait lists. They
Yeah.
are they are tired. And so when it comes to these kids that have IEPs and 504s, it's hard because you're being put on a wait list and say, hey, yeah, you can get a one-on-one when we have a meeting in 6 months. And they're like, well, I get a call for him every single day. What am I going to do? And then I step in and say, okay, let's make a behavior plan for him. Let's try to support him with what we have. We may not have a one-on-one, but what we do have is we do have me. I have tools that are able to kind of get them through the school day, get them school through the school day. And as a parent, the system is very, they will give you as much as you beg for.
Yeah.
They don't give you what your child deserves.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that I had to fight for. As a parent, I had to fight to get my son the services he needs. And
Mm-hmm.
so as going into a school, I was able to sit and fight for those parents that just was like, I just can't get in contact with the New Haven Public Schools. Like
Mm-hmm.
I cannot get in. I'm like, okay, you know what? I got it. Let's do some things. Let's shake it and move it. And I think that that is the real good thing that I have where I'm able to have the ability to be able to advocate for those parents because I am that parent, but I am also that educator. I am also that, person that believes that every kid should have an equal opportunity to learn and have materials and the power and the things to be able to learn. And so the system honestly is broken. It does not give parents a fair and even children a fair chance to succeed. And so my job is to not just support the children, but also support these parents and give them the resources, the knowledge, and give them, okay, you need this. What can I do to support you? Because a lot of people think, okay, well, I work in a school, I'm only servicing kids. You are not. You are servicing kids as well as parents,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the school system as a whole. And so we have to understand that as parents, we also have to understand that we are also there, and we need to have some grace for these educators because you do have some educators like me that's really trying to advocate. Yes, I may call you and say, little Jimmy is having a rough day, but I'm the background. I'm like, okay, what can we do for little Jimmy? What can we do? How can we support him? How can we get him the services that we need? And if that means we need to call 15 meetings, I will call 15 meetings. If that means we have to show up and call New Haven Public Schools and make sure that they're doing what they need, we're going to do that. And so
So what about parents' engagement? Because one of the things you did, when you were at the very beginning of our center is you you sat down and you were open and transparent with the teachers, right? So that
yes.
and based on that transparency and the knowledge that they now have of your experience, it changed the dynamic entirely. And I will agree with you that special education children are, kind of excluded from programs in early child education programs.
Yes.
But I will fully acknowledge that is also a system failure because
Yeah,
we also don't have the resources to
yeah,
support children with complex medical needs and complex medical issues. And so some programs that you said, like Don't Call Us, We'll Call You.
yeah,
Um, but again, what is the role that parents have? Because, we can go and advocate internally with the system, but
yes,
and I know parents' voices are very
matter.
powerful,
Yeah,
right? And, we wanted to engage you in some legislative work here in Connecticut, for you to come tell your stories because we have seen that legislators do react and respond to
yes,
these authentic voices and these authentic stories. But it's really hard to engage these new parents
yeah,
in that kind of work. I have to say, I've been doing this for 20 years and we have a parent advisory council that I've seen the evolution of that council over the years where we don't see as much engagement from
yeah,
parents as we did from, parents from like even 10 years ago. So what is the role and the responsibility in parents to actually show up for their kids? Because Tia, you can't fight this battle for all of
yeah,
them. No.
yeah. And I tried to, even while I was at Booker T. Washington, I tried to engage the parents and really give them some knowledge on how to advocate for their kids. Because honestly, this generation, they lack the knowledge on how to advocate,
Mhm.
how to advocately at like effectively advocate for their kids. They struggle with the ability to know what to do next. They said, hey, we're sending them to school, you should be able to do the rest. And so really understanding and giving them a knowledge of, hey, but I need you to fight too. We
Yeah.
can't be in the ring all by ourselves because they won't listen to us because at this point they will say, hey, you're the educator, just teach them and send them home. And so people don't understand that sometimes this disconnect doesn't just start at school, it starts at home.
Yeah.
And so the child lacks motivation from home. And so it makes it difficult for them to be successful in the school day. And so I had to really sit with parents and say, hey, they need this, 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 this. You need to advocate for this, 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 this. When you do that, let me know and stay on top of them and give them some motivation for them to understand that they're not alone because some parents just give up the fight because they're just exhausted. And
Yeah.
I say, hey, I understand because I get calls from my son. I understand my son has special needs. I understand it is exhausting, but we have to fight. We have to fight.
So what is the danger when parents don't fight? Because again, as you said, you're only going to get what you fight for. And parent
Yes.
voices are incredibly powerful, but those voices are missing, right? And, in all fairness, I have to give the other side. We do create the advocates, people like you and myself, we create those areas and those arenas for parents to get involved, but
Yeah.
we don't see parents in those
Involvement.
spaces. We see one or two, and a person like yourself, Tia, you come in, you're so passionate. And I think your passion would exist regardless of what would happen with your son. But that is something that's just built in you. But there, you spoke to a real issue that many people that's inside the system are
Yeah.
experiencing with parents. And we got
Yeah.
to call everything out. We got to call the system out. We got to call
Yeah.
the teachers out. We got to
Parents.
call the parents out because there is a tremendous lack of apathy with parents, and you're not, as you said, you have to fight for this. So how do we activate parents when there is so much apathy? There's something wrong with your video.
Kaden,
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 turn off the light.
Kaden, please turn on the lights. 1 second.
Yes.
There we
This
are.
is this is what we mean by,
Yes.
having children. And we
Yes.
saw some aspect of this during the pandemic, and I think this is what people understood when we were doing the pandemic and during the pandemic where parents had to work within a condition where children were at home with them.
Yes.
So is there any way to kind of to fix the lighting? I'm just gonna give you an opportunity to do that.
Thank you.
So we're back. We took a momentary pause to get Mr. Caden all settled, but
Yes.
so we're back and we were talking about the fact that, we have to activate parents. So how do we do that in a world where parents are basically saying, well, that's your job to kind of do that, or I just don't know what to do. How do you suggest that we support parents?
I think really giving them some grace and also giving them a chance to understand the background. I think really educating them on what the background is and what their voice means. I
Mhm,
think sometimes parents don't know that their voice means the world.
mhm,
They feel like, well, they rather hear from you as the teacher, or,
mhm.
they don't want to listen to me, or they don't pick up my calls. And I said, well, if they don't pick up your calls, you send emails. If they don't pick up your emails, you go to the office. You have to activate that parent role because if you don't, it will be detrimental to your child because we
Mhm.
can only do but so much. We can only fight for but so much. It is your job as the parent to really you see them just as much as we see them. That is your child, and I am advocating for 200 plus kids.
Mhm.
It is so imperative that we educate our parents on the importance of their voice and the importance of their role in their child's life and advocating for their child.
So how have you been successful, I guess is a better question. Have you been successful in activating parents in the work that you've done? And can you share how that happened for that particular parent?
Yes, so I have been. I had once the scholar that was having a tough time. He had ADHD. His medication was unregulated, and it was hard for us to activate that parent to come and be a part and really learn and really, really get their child to want to um, participate in school and things like that.
Mhm.
And so it was successful because I sat with her multiple times. And sometimes she's like, "Hey, I want to go. I'm ready to go." Or like I have something to do. But by the end of the school year, she was like, "Okay, what do I have to do? How do I get him into this service? Like, how do I make it happen? How do I make it work? Or what do I say? Or who do I call? Or can you help me? Or can you tell me and write down what I need to say? Or can you tell me and write down the issues that he's having?" And
Mhm.
I'm like, of course, yes, I can. Because at the same time, we want to activate these parents, but we also want to equip them.
Yeah.
Because if we activate them and they're coming with full blown rage, they also some parents don't know how to go about it. Some
Yeah.
parents don't know how to form it. And so sometimes their approach can do more harm than them coming at all. And so
Yeah.
we have to approach them like, hey, I need you to call them and I need you to announce who you are. And I give them the steps. I give them how to talk to them, the language to use,
Mhm.
the resources to bring up. That is so important, not just throwing them to the wolves, but really setting them up for success on how to properly advocate. She left, got her son into a residential program, got him the help he needed, got him his medication and all of his things. And so really it took some time. It took some coaching. It took a lot of grace. But as an educator, as someone that advocates for children, I felt it was so important for me to do that. And it was an awesome, awesome outcome.
And again, that's just amazing to hear. And I've had similar experience with, supporting parents and it's important even just to get the one or two voices. But we want to also acknowledge the other part of the system who are the educators themselves, because, they're also to some extent victims of the system. The
Yeah.
teachers in those classrooms, even the behaviorist who has to go in sometimes to support those children, and the early educators. And we don't often give voices to those providers as well. And what's happening in the school with educators is a real thing. Could you talk about burnout?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that burnout is real, and that some of the behaviors of the children, it's really
Rough.
bad, and I don't think enough folks understand. So, how would you um, support those educator voices in the system? Because some educators are being assaulted. You
Yeah.
go to school and the behavior of children who are, and they're just tiny themselves and they don't understand all of the emotions that they're
Yeah.
feeling. And some of them are young in age, but they're big in body and they're
Yeah.
physically assaulting, educators. And so, how do you also activate those educator voices to keep them engaged in still advocating for children when they're also being, they're struggling without resources in the classroom?
Yeah. So I think for me, the biggest way I support educators, as I did in my last role, was giving them the tools and
Mhm.
giving them the strategies. I think everyone doesn't have the ability to be able to have the ABA background that I do.
Okay.
Everyone doesn't have the ability to have the
And you
problem
said
solving.
ABA again, so as
ABA.
an advocate, I'm gonna say, what does ABA mean?
So ABA is oh my goodness, I'm blanking. Hold on.
Is it advanced behavior?
Advanced behavior um, analyzing.
Hmm.
And so that is something that basically you work on the function of a behavior and you go through what the function of behavior is.
Hmm.
And so it's really when you sit and you see a behavior and you find out what the function of that behavior is and what can you do to turn out the expected expected reaction to that behavior.
Hmm.
And so a lot of teachers aren't equipped with that, nor are they equipped with de-escalation tactics, which basically means how to bring a child from here to here without physically intervening,
Hmm.
as putting him in a restraint or a hold, or even touching them as a whole, or engaging in any kind of combative power struggle.
Hmm.
I think that that's one thing that I was really big on. I had coaching sessions weekly at my school on our kids that were really heavy, on how to, as a teacher, you combat that challenging behavior. And I think giving them that support as I will be there, but if I am not there, these are the tools that you can do. These are the things that you can do. And some teachers are like, well, I shouldn't have to do this. Like this, I just should be here to teach math, reading, and science. And I have to be open with them and understand that, but your duty as a teacher is to service everyone.
Yeah.
You can't pick and choose who you service. And some of our kiddos have a magnitude of issues going on. And it's our job as educators to make sure that we're equipped with the knowledge. And if we're not equipped, to get equipped with the knowledge on how to advocate for our kids and how to effectively make sure that they're learning the way that they should be.
Yeah.
And so I've done coaching sessions. I've done, certain things to just have them make sure that they're equipped to be able to handle situations even when I'm not there.
Yeah. So in the last couple of minutes, Tia, I want to give you an opportunity just to, if you had to imagine a better system, a better world, for your son, Caden, from the perspective as a parent, from the perspective as a child care early educator yourself, and as a perspective now as a behaviorist, what do you think would be the most important things that we could do or should do to support Caden?
So I think that the first thing is to understand that everyone is not the same
Hmm.
and that these kids need the same amount of support that any kid that is able and capable of advocating their self would get.
Hmm.
This world does not cater to those kids that have special needs. This system is not good. The system is twisted into thinking that if you have a child with special needs, you should have the funds to be able to have the proper things to be able to afford these things. I think that for me, I just hope and pray that this system allows a space for Caden and allows a space for Caden to flourish and do awesome and be awesome and be not just pushed aside or pushed forward, but to really be in the spotlight to shine how he is. He's very smart. The system, I want, everyone to understand that special needs and kids that have disabilities and developmental disabilities, mental health issues and things like that, your child is not less than. Your
Mhm.
child is not important. Your child deserves education. Your child deserves to be loved. Your child deserves to be advocated for. Your child deserves people that want to show up to continuously advocate for him. And that your fight is not just a fight that you're fighting alone, but is
Mhm.
a fight that the system needs to continuously combat with love, with grace, and also with um, resources to support us in those things.
Mhm. So I so appreciate your time with us, Tia. We certainly will miss you in Connecticut and
Yes.
definitely miss you at Hope. And I definitely will miss you in the advocacy work that's needed here in Connecticut to build
Yes.
a better Connecticut for all of our children, regardless of their abilities and their needs and their socioeconomic standing. But I know that Seattle has gained an incredible woman who is going to fight for those children as well. And I think we should be in a United States where all children get that world. And so we're gonna have you bring up Mr. Caden, seeing that he wants to interject in our conversation. And we're just gonna have you all and Caden say goodbye to everyone and and have a great, wonderful time in Seattle.
Yes, thank you so
And
much.
keep up the advocacy, keep up the passion, great success in everything that you're doing. Have a good one.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you.
You are listening to Inside Voices on WNHHLP 103.5 FM.